what things, what people, what situations are contributing to reinforcing this thing that I don't want to be, this reality that I don't want to be in. And what do I need to do to change that? Number one, it's going to be uncomfortable as heck. It's like trying to learn a new language. You ever try to learn a new language? You're going to have a terrible accent. You're going to have to repeat it a million times. You're going to pick the wrong word. It's so uncomfortable. But it's the only way to learn. But so many people are afraid of that leap that they just decide not to learn. And that is what constricts us. That's what's, chaining us to the same life that we've always had. It inhibits our freedom.
Welcome to OTR, Over the Rainbow, Achieving Mental Health for Real. This podcast offers hope to many people who needlessly suffer from mental health issues. Your host, Bob Adelman, brings you information on how you can recover from any mental health issue and achieve a happier life. If you want to know more, please check out his trailer.
Welcome to Reel 7, the best of 2025 Part 2. There's much more information and inspiration left in the second part of the season. From tackling grief to addressing the seriousness of the eating disorder known as binging. Each episode moves you closer to the tools you need to achieve mental health for real. So, relax and enjoy the last best of till next year. The first episode is Big Boys Don't Cry, Handling Grief. A deeply honest exploration of grief, fear, and the universal reality of losing the people we love. This conversation with Becky McCoy doesn't shy away from the hard edges. Instead, it opens space for tenderness, courage, and the slow work of healing. Becky brings her lived experience as a young widow, her training in spiritual formation, and her trauma-informed approach to guide listeners through what it means to suffer, to question, and to keep going. Let's listen in.
My parents stayed together through my childhood. My dad died when I was in my 20s, but, I never doubted that they loved me. We had some challenges in that both of my mom's parents died in my early childhood. So there was always a lot of grief in my house, which on the one hand meant that death and dying was not a foreign concept. It was always a normal part of life. So to speak to the fear of losing more people, that has taken a lot of therapy. The therapist I ended up seeing after my husband died, specializes in combat PTSD. He is in the National Guard and has been a therapist and a chaplain during deployments and back here stateside and whatnot. And he said that my response to my husband's death, when you add it up with losing my dad and losing various other friends and family members and coworkers and whatnot, really was resembling combat PTSD. And I couldn't be in crowded spaces. I couldn't handle loud noises. I was just kind of barely keeping one foot in front of the other. And so accepting that and learning about that and being honest about how much it was impacting me was really important. And then doing the things that my body, my nervous system, my mind, my heart, my spirit, all of those things needed. So I spent a lot of time in therapy doing the things that I needed to do to heal. And that has helped me to recognize that when I do inevitably face other losses, like I have over, even within the last decade, one of the big things is that I have to allow myself to feel the grief. I have to let myself be sad. We kind of culturally have this expectation that you take 3 days off and then get back to life and you move on. And that's just not how grief or loss works.
I've been searching for a true spiritual pathway. And I believe pretty strongly that, the medicine can help a lot. It's helped me a lot. But to actually find your way inside and learn to love yourself and be good to yourself is absolutely the hardest thing. It's almost like we were put on this earth to do it, to try it. And,
yep.
Some people fail miserably. Others, like myself, I always think I have a long way to go.
Next is the episode Producing Dopamine, a Healthy Alternative. A powerful and eye-opening conversation with Andy Y. West, who takes us inside her journey from the depths of long COVID and cognitive decline to a full, vibrant recovery by learning to work with the brain's dopamine system instead of against it. Drawing from her books Planet Dopamine, Dopamine Mountain, and Anhedonia Wastelands, Andy breaks down how dopamine shapes our behavior, why harmful coping mechanisms can feel so compelling, and how intentional, science-backed habits can retrain the brain toward healthier, sustainable sources of motivation and joy. Together, we explore the neurobiology behind drive, the biochemical loop of self-harm, and practical tools for rewiring mindset, rebuilding momentum, and lifting ourselves out of depression and anxiety. It's an energizing, hopeful, and surprisingly fun deep dive into reclaiming our mental health in a world overloaded with negativity, and a reminder that unity, love, and intentional change can reshape everything. Let's listen in.
So instead of raising our dopamine from a drug or from an experience or something we want. So dopamine is what we want and crave. Like it might be gambling, it could be porn, it could be gaming, it could be a substance, even coffee and sugar. But here's the trick. There's two main ways to raise our dopamine. So one is with those external things we want and crave. Now, those external things, when we use those, it might be a drug, a drink, whatever, then our dopamine will rise, but the body goes, oh, well, I don't need to make my own dopamine now. And so we become reliant on that thing. And next time we need more because the body goes, well, I'm not making it. I'll just get it this easy way, this easy and fast way.
Right.
The caffeine, the porn, the
sugar.
Gaming, the sugar, whatever it is we want. So here's the amazing thing, which is backed up by research. We can actually raise our dopamine by ironically dropping it first. Now, this if anyone's done a dopamine detox, they will know what this is about. Now, a dopamine detox is not pseudoscience. It's actually, there's proven studies in monkeys that the more we delay our gratification, we allow dopamine to rise while we are waiting. And so that means that when we finally do have the thing that we wanted, it will be a bigger rise because we've had to wait and wait and wait. So it becomes more of a more substantial rise in dopamine. So what we can do is deliberately drop our dopamine first thing in the morning with hard and difficult tasks.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a workout first thing in the morning, a dopamine detox, a cold shower, something that we really don't like and don't want. And then just from the relief of that stopping, our dopamine will actually rise naturally on its own. And then if we give ourselves a reward, so we wait after we do the hard thing and then we have our breakfast or our coffee or whatever, we allow dopamine to supercharge because we've pushed it down, we've let it rise, and then we've boosted it with a rewarding rise. Now, when people start to do the order of effort and then reward and then a mini rest, they actually start to jumpstart and cycle their dopamine in a fresh new way. And it takes a few reps, just like building muscle.
Mm-hmm.
But doing this kickstarts our natural dopamine into gear, so we have much more of it available. So for myself, doing this changed my absolute life. I was on my last brain cell, it felt like, and after a few weeks of doing this in the right order, it has to be effort first, then reward,
right,
and then rest. Amazing changes in my focus, like all of my dopamine system came back online. I thought I was going to die from dementia. It was so extreme.
Wow.
And because this worked for me, I said, I have to write a book about this and research why it works so that people feel that there is a way forward out of this, strange brain foggy land of low dopamine.
And what happens to a lot of people is they try to produce dopamine without even knowing they're doing it. They create trauma in their lives. People exist in a fight or fight mode, and so they go and they get all excited. Then the dopamine flows a little, and then it drops. And then on the weekends, they're in bad shape. They need to recover. Like I couldn't even get up on weekends. I was sleeping the whole time. And I think there's a lot of people that don't really realize what they're doing is producing like the dopamine. I know I heard you talk about animals. I know I saw a documentary about a mouse who they took the dopamine out of his brain, all of it. And he wouldn't even get up to get the cheese, which was right next to him, like a foot away.
See, it was millimeters that it would not move, even though the food was there. And that is because dopamine doesn't just represent our drive and our energy. It is our drive and energy. So if we've chemically depleted that, we cannot move forward. It's not that we don't want to or we don't think we can. We just don't have the chemical mechanism for forward movement. However, if that mouse waits long enough and it starts to go into starvation, its dopamine will drop so low that
They'll die.
Yes, they will die, and animals die without dopamine. And so the thing is, right, we have neuroplasticity, and that means we have a learning system in the brain, and it's very closely tied to our dopamine system. And that is because when we do something and we get dopamine, just say we climb a tree and we get a nice apple, we eat the apple, we get some dopamine and another neurotransmitter called GABA, which is the feeling good chemical. And then that little bit of energy goes, oh, yes, I've learned that this pays off. This is great, and I'll do it again. So that's why dopamine is tied into our learning system, because it reinforces the things that raise our dopamine and give us energy. So anyone in any state can actually use dopamine to their advantage by doing a deliberately hard and challenging thing. Now, for some people, that's moving their hand slightly closer to the edge of the bed. It doesn't have to be extreme. It just has to be a challenge. And then the trick is to reward that challenge and reward the success. So when you've made that movement, you've actually grown new synapses, and that is success. We grow the brain every time we do a challenging thing, but we have to reward ourselves at least mentally and say, excellent, you're on the right track, now do it again. And each time we get a successful movement, we need to reward that and spur ourselves on, and that will give us more energy to do more of it. But if we say to ourselves, I'm still in bed, why am I such a failure? Well, no, that's not going to help your dopamine system. It's a success system. So GABA, the other neurotransmitter of liking and success, says, yes, that worked, let's do it again. But if you're just trying something and it feels like it's not working, why would you try again? We have to have feedback that, yes, we are moving, we are in motion. And there's an opposite chemical to dopamine called glutamate. So I think of it like the arch nemesis of dopamine. So glutamate is when we're in that fight or flight mode, running away, aversion, withdrawal, and negative emotions. All of that, and fear and pain, all of that is controlled not by dopamine, by its opposite, which is glutamate. So if we've had a lot of trauma in our life, we are storing up excess glutamate, because trauma, if it's not actually expressed and dealt with in a forward-moving and brave way. So, for example, we have something very horrible happen to us, which most of us have had, but some people have had some really traumatic experiences. The way to process that isn't to not think about it or to close off. It's to go towards because we use dopamine every time we go forward, to explore and name those feelings. So we might have feelings of anger or disgust or betrayal. You know, we might experience frustration and pain, and we need to write them down or name them and really go towards them, explore them and feel them, because they cannot hurt us when we're the one going towards. But when we withdraw, so the chemical of withdrawal is that one I mentioned, glutamate. If we run away, we say no, we say I'm too scared for this, we're just adding more glutamate to the system instead of using dopamine. So everything that we shy away from or bottle up is actually just making more glutamate, which is more trauma. So to move forwards out of these situations, you'll find that the people who have really had the most growth are the ones who were brave enough to say, I'm going to remember this, I'm going to write it down to get it out of the head, or I'm going to express it to somebody or myself, and really to be brave enough to sit in those emotions, which are really hard to do, but that's why it grows the brain.
Next is Hi, I'm God, Recovery and Thriving with Schizophrenia. We revisit a conversation with Dale Walsh, a man who has not only lived through schizophrenia but transformed that experience into a source of clarity, purpose, and service. Drawing from his rare inside-out perspective, Dale guides families navigating the realities of serious mental illness, helping them bridge emotional distance and rediscover connection. His Live Love method offers caregivers a way to communicate with compassion while reclaiming their own identity in the process. This segment honors the resilience, honesty, and humanity at the heart of mental health stories, and the power of lived experience to illuminate a path forward. Let's listen.
You have a company called the Do Live Love. It's an LLC, and it's a DEW Live Love, and it's actually a mentoring business for the family caregivers of those with schizophrenia. And it's an idea that came to me about 7 years ago when I figured out how much pain I'd caused my own family through my schizophrenia, and also how lost they were when I did get sick. So it has a double function of not only helping people communicate better with their affected loved ones, but more importantly to reclaim their own self-integrity and integration, so that they can not only be better caregivers, but also less codependent and also just more secure in themselves, because a lot of people blame themselves for their loved ones getting sick. I was at Dartmouth College, and basically I came up with what I thought was a great joke, which was, "Hi, I'm God." I was walking around campus telling everybody about my joke, and then laughing hysterically because how could God be 5'8"? I thought it was like the best joke I'd ever come up with. But after about 3 days of this, the campus cops came up and said, "Are you Dale?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Will you come with us?" I said, "Sure." I figured they were going to take me to meet the president of the university, but instead they took me on a 2-minute ride to the infirmary, where I was interrogated for the next 4 hours by 3 sets of Ivy League psychiatrists, put in a room shot full of drugs. And 2 days later, I was in a mental hospital in New York City, where I spent the next 13 weeks. And then after that, I came to a private psychiatric residence program in Hackensack, New Jersey, under the direction of a single doctor. It was like an extraordinary program for adolescents and young adults. And I had like intensive therapy, 3 individual sessions and 2 group sessions a week for 5 years. I got out of there. I got my own apartment, unsupervised apartment. I've been living by myself for basically since 1981.
On a scale of 1 through 10, how happy and content do you think you are now?
I'd say 23. I'm just grateful to be on my own, to be able to live my life I have a very good routine. I'm very, I get through. I actually was a financial professional for the last 3 years. I sort of moved on to that in pursuit of my mentoring business. But, I'm very social. I have no problem socializing. But in the past, obviously, it's a process, and I have learned how to cope. And after going back to college after the program, it basically took me 3 years to learn how to socialize with normal college students.
Warrior Mom Rising story of recovery from PTSD using EMDR is next. We revisit a conversation with Jen Robb, author, coach, and a mother forged in the fire of her daughter's anxiety, depression, and trauma. With 2 decades in acute care medicine and training in functional and integrative approaches, Jen brings both clinical grounding and lived compassion to the families she serves. Her book Warrior Mom Rising chronicles the moments when she felt lost, overwhelmed, and unsure how to help, yet still kept fighting for connection, clarity, and hope. Let's listen.
Yeah, so it was my daughter. Her name's Chloe, and so she is the baby of 3. But when she was about 12 or 13, she started noticing like little things, right? Like her grades, were slipping. She was no longer the straight A student. She started wanting to be, super isolating, where she wanted to sit in a pitch black room in the dark all day. She's always been a cheerleader and loves like competitive cheerleading, and she just didn't want any part of it. And so we went through that where she started really having severe anxiety and was depression. And then she ultimately got into self-harm, which was the cutting for her. She was cutting her arms and her legs. But it was actually a year or so later that she finally actually came and told us that the root of the problem was that she had been sexually assaulted by another peer. Which was
what age was she?
So she was 10 or 11 when that happened, but she didn't tell us until she was 13 and a half.
That could mess you up a little
bit. Well, and you realize that kids are not equipped to carry that type of burden, right? No. And they don't even know how to speak about what they're feeling, much less to deal with the whole gravity of that situation. And so it was really through that she struggled for years. And the goal and my mission was to get her help that was going to fix and help get to the root cause of the problem, not just put a Band-Aid on it. So we had her in a counselor's office on Christmas Eve of 2020. I just needed somebody that, I felt was more qualified to handle this than I was. But one thing I learned through this is that not all counselors and therapists are the same, right? So like it's a vetting process. And while that counselor was super sweet and great, she wasn't what Chloe needed long term. Because I needed Chloe to get to and want to deal with the root of the problem, not just put a Band-Aid on it. And what I figured out, about 3 months in, is that Chloe was just telling this counselor what the counselor wanted to hear to make her think that Chloe was getting better.
Got it. Yeah.
But then all the telltale signs were that she was still cutting and she wasn't getting better. Because, kids are smart. I mean, adults are smart too, but kids are very smart, and they know that she didn't want to hurt us anymore as her parents, but she wasn't really interested in doing the work at that point. And if she could just, temporize it by saying, "Oh, I'm fine," and then that counselor believing that, well, then that's what she wanted everybody else to believe too. And that went on for probably a couple of years where I was taking her to different therapists and counselors. And then the huge turning point for us was on April 4th of 23, when Chloe, her 2 brothers, had found her unresponsive, laying face down in a pool of vomit in her room.
Overdose?
Yeah, so they called 911. We rushed her to the hospital, and through all their lab testing, we found out that she had broken into a liquor cabinet that had 2 locks on it, and basically was trying to drink to drown out the noise that was going on in her head. And her alcohol level was 4 times the lethal limit.
Did the counselor, well, I don't know if you're seeing a psychiatrist, did anyone ever mention, medication to help with the pain of it? For her pain, I don't know if you were worried about her getting addicted, but any kind of like Xanax type thing, I urge people to consider it. I know, it has a bad rap and they could get addicted and all this stuff, but it's better than them cutting or committing suicide or like what happened to your daughter.
Right.
Just as you're helping them, take a little of the edge off. Mm-hmm. It's not like, it's not like drinking or something. It's just something that can really help a lot. And it's very unlikely that it'll hurt that much.
Right. Yeah. And that was never an option. I think probably because she was, fairly young. Right. But I can see the value in that. But she, and that's, even with psychiatrists, it's a vetting process, right? Trying to find the right one and the right fit.
And they all think they're great. So who do you believe? It's like any other profession. There's a large part of that profession that isn't that good. And then there's a large, there's maybe, I would say 25% that are great, And right. So you got to find somebody. It took me years to find somebody that knew how to treat me.
Right. But I think that there's meaning in that, right? Is that especially, it's one thing to know how to advocate for yourself, like as an adult, but I think, kids, they don't know how to advocate. And many parents feel like they just have to take whatever that doctor or psychiatrist or therapist says kind of at face value, right? Like, and you can't question what they say or what they suggest.
I had so much experience with bad psychiatrists before I found one that was good.
Right. And that's what you want. You have to keep looking and searching for the one that's going to help you. And just because they tell you need to take, these 3 pills, if you're having side effects to the medicines, you don't have to stay with those, right? Like there are other alternatives.
Yeah. Well, sometimes if you get past the hump, like this last medicine I got, it gave me headaches for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. I said, look, I want to get to the point where I think it'll help me and I can stand these headaches for 2 weeks. So that's exactly what happened. And the pill was a night and day game changer. I went from apathy, laying in bed the whole weekend, doing nothing, watching TV, to getting up, getting on the computer, solving all my problems, my taxes and all of this stuff, all in like one day. So go ahead. You couldn't find a good doctor is probably what you're saying, right? Right away.
Yeah. So, it was just a series of trying to find the right one for her. And then it was also finding a therapist that was actually trained in other cognitive behavior therapies like EMDR.
Right.
And EMDR was actually the game changer for Chloe.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. That's good. That's an excellent PTSD thing.
Yes, it is.
Did you hear about EFT, this tapping? Did you try that one?
No, we just did the EMDR because it worked really well for her. It's the rapid eye movement. Yeah. And then, but that one worked really, really well for her.
Well, of course,
it's hard because they have to go back and kind of relive it, relive the trauma. Mm-hmm. But it does help. And it's been a game changer for her.
It helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe you because it can be night and day.
Yeah, 100%.
So once you got into the EMDR, how long after that was she feeling better, or right away?
Oh no, it took probably a good 3.5 months. Because it's not an instantaneous thing, right? Because they have to work through, basically go back and relive the trauma, whatever is causing the PTSD. They have to go back and relive that. And it's basically bringing all of those memories, smell, the sounds, all of those things back to the forefront so that they can work on retraining the brain a better coping mechanism so that they're not easily triggered anymore.
Right.
And it definitely took some time. It's not an instantaneous thing. And I think that's part of the problem is that we live in a very much like the Amazon society where everybody wants, to order it today and it be here tomorrow.
Yes.
And it's not that way with mental health, right?
No. Say, I know you're feeling really bad. It will pass. Don't harm yourself. Do the exercises that the counselor money gave you, all those things. But don't tell them, well, maybe if we do this and that, well, you won't feel that way. And they're going to feel it. You have to go with it. And they have to face their own demons.
Right.
I mean, most people don't. Most people don't face their demons. But people that get in depression and stuff have to do it to get out of it. They can't back down. We had a guy in here, he had bipolar. He said the worst part was the feeling of anxiety that he had just to live, okay? And he said, if you back down, it will get worse.
Mm-hmm.
If you're afraid of something and you don't do it, now, within limits, if it's a car coming, you don't want to get hit by a car. But if you want to help yourself, you have to face straight on into the demons and say, I call them demons. Say, guess what? You can't do that to me anymore. You can't make me feel bad anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's so important to getting over things. I mean, it's everything. It's just the ability to overcome the voices, the things that make you feel like you're not good enough. And, teenagers have to go through this with no equipment. We don't have a class saying,
right.
Oh, we're going to have a class on anxiety. So PTSD is very common, very popular, I guess you could say. And, you're living proof. I'm living proof. I can name 1,000 people living proof that it works when you do the work and you're not afraid anymore. You have to get not afraid.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to cut. You're going to create trauma. That's a big one. Oh, my life is drama, let's say. I mean, you will make up problems. Believe me, I know. I'm still doing it. Mm-hmm. I catch myself in it. I say, no, Bob, this is crazy. Just back off. And that's what you have to do. And I emphasize, you have to do the work. And without doing the work, you're going nowhere. Once the dog was trained, mm-hmm. You use it to just be with her, Chloe, or did she do other things?
Yeah, so Luna was trained to recognize Chloe's anxiety symptoms. So Chloe always had a tell of like when she would start to fidget with her hands or start to shake her leg. So Luna is trained to that when she sees Chloe start to exhibit those behaviors, she either nudges in her hands to break up so that Chloe can't like rub her hands together and that she can pet Luna.
Mm-hmm.
And Luna's also trained when Chloe starts shaking her legs to lay her body across Chloe.
Okay.
Which gives the pressure, right? And gives a sense of...
Oh, it's beautiful.
And so she's essentially giving her a hug in that moment.
Yes.
And that is very, very comforting to Chloe. Luna she's been trained. She, has gone on family vacations with us. She can go on airplanes, and service dogs, there's nowhere that they can't go mm-hmm. if they're fully, vetted service animals. And I love the picture of Luna because she was discarded, right? And when you think about like that as symbolic of what sometimes people with mental health struggles really feel like they are, like they're not worthy. They're just being discarded by other people. But Luna has served a greater purpose, and now she truly is with Chloe all the time. And Luna is one of the biggest blessings that we could have ever asked for.
Yeah.
Because she does help Chloe. You know,
That's
she's
terrific.
Chloe's constant companion.
Next is just a person living authentically through ADHD, PTSD, using CMI. We revisit a conversation with Estefana Johnson, who surprised me right out of the gate by describing herself simply as just a person, despite a career filled with depth, experience, and impact. Our discussion moved from the power of living as your authentic, unmasked self into her leadership role in launching critical memory integration, a therapeutic model that challenges the idea that talk therapy alone can reach the roots of trauma.
Good. So the first question I always ask is just briefly tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm just a person. I'm a human being, you know, fellow sojourner on this path, trying to figure out how to best maximize what we can get from life and leave an impact on, hopefully, on making it a better world for my kids and for those that come after us. Sure. I mean, I think that, you know, everybody has their own challenges in childhood, and you know, my particular flavor of challenges was, you know, coming in as a first generation Mexican American, which as a kid, you don't really realize how much your experiences impact how your view of the world and how you perceive reality. And I was raised like in an adobe house, you know, with the dirt floors, even though we were like right on the outskirts of El Paso. You can call that, you know, it's pretty drastic poverty. I mean, you know, definitely on government assistance, but I joke around and say if you sweep for too long, you end up with a basement, you know, because it's a dirt floor. But I was a happy kid. I mean, I had some anger issues too, you know, because there was like domestic violence in the home, and had a very religious, rigid religious family, and mom had pretty severe trauma, so she had a lot of pain that she kind of you know, projected on us as kids. And so, you know, growing up, I think you just know what you know. That's all you know. You just think this is what the world's about. But going to school and seeing how people were different, you just start questioning what is it about you that makes you not deserving of maybe what other kids have, or why, you know, other kids seem to look at things differently or know different things. And you don't think, you just question it. You don't really realize it's hard for a little kid to conceptualize life. You're just trying to figure it out. So I recognize that, you know, once I grew up, how much a lot of those experiences impacted how I see the world, how, you know, my attachment strategies and things like that. And of course, after I became a mental health professional, it really, you know, I started understanding there was labels on things. And I think the hard part is, as a person who experiences stuff, that's just life to you. So to have someone outside of you label it as a problem can be pretty impactful as well. I mean, I think sometimes labels really play into our already struggles with accepting ourselves. And so coming from that background, I think that's why I have such a passion for normalizing the human experience and saying, yeah, this for you might be weird, but it just makes sense in my world and the way I was raised. So that's kind of how I approach everything and how I approach my practice and my interactions with people. I'm very curious about their history and about their experiences, because I know that plays a lot of a part in how we respond to things, how we navigate through life. Who has unprocessed or undigested experiences, we call those unintegrated memories. They're not really connected. You experienced something as a child that was too big to handle, too much, or because it was ongoing. So if there was domestic violence in the home, alcoholism, all kinds, or neglect, or any of that, there was no caretaker to teach you how to get through that experience. So there's a lack of what we call capacities, or there's a lack of skills. And if you cannot master those experiences as a child, life only gets increasingly more difficult and complex. So it becomes very difficult to process or get through the experiences as an adult. And so the problem is not necessarily the challenges that come as an adult, rather the lack of capacity to navigate through those challenges. That is what the problem that creates this problem where these experiences are now playing over and over in your head, or your nervous system gets stuck in survival mode, or panic happens or whatnot. Those are the things that we tend to pathologize, meaning we're turning them into a problem instead of recognizing that those are indicators of something that's lacking from within. Okay, I could teach you how to regulate your nervous system. I can help you, get past these nightmares or flashbacks. But at the end of the day, do you love yourself? Do you understand yourself better, deeper, appreciate your journey more than when you first met me? Like, are you in a place where you trust yourself to then take control over your life? Because I don't believe that therapists are supposed to be like there for life, right? Good therapy should equip you with a better understanding of yourself because you are the expert of your own life. And so we were looking for something that would help get those pieces of how the individual perceives themselves. And so that's where CMI came from. It's critical memory integration. It's a method that helps people connect to that inner experience and tap into their inner wisdom. That that aspect, it's essentially like a process that allows the mind and the body to reveal where the root of these responses is coming from. So whether it's early childhood experience or whether it's an adaptive response or sometimes it shows up like a metaphor. But as you connect to it, you have to go through the process internally, like your body is sending signals that's letting you know there's something here that is demanding your attention. And this is the process of integration, looking at that experience, allowing yourself to access it. So the process is called memory reconsolidation. And what that means is that every time you recall something, the memory lights up. It's not like a book, but we use the book analogy because you know how books have like the place, the person, the story, but it's really neural network. It's a memory network in your brain that gets activated, like lit up. And anytime that happens, it's susceptible to change. There's new information that could be connected to it. And when we have an experience that's stored in one of those neural networks that we try to forget, that we pushed away, or we never really resolved, it's like this missing puzzle piece that's shoved in the back of your closet. And it still continues to dictate your response, but it's ruling you from beneath your conscious awareness. And that's where we get stuck in these loops of thinking, I know better, I should do better, but why do I keep doing this thing that I promised myself I'd never do? That's where we get frustrated because our brain is dissociating when we really want to demand it to be present. Or when we get this emotion response that is extra and we get frustrated with ourselves because there's something missing.
You wind up doing what other people did to you.
Yeah,
a lot of times.
You wind up doing the same thing that you're trying to avoid.
And reliving also.
Yeah.
I talked to some women that were, their husbands made them into sex slaves or whatever.
Yep.
But they would say to me, that's the third time I went with somebody that did that. I'm like, really? I mean, how do you pick them?
And those are the pieces I saw, Bob. Those are the pieces I saw in my practice is like, okay, I'm helping this woman that's in a domestic violence situation and she finally breaks away, finds this other guy that is like, the love of her life. And lo and behold, 2 years later, it's the same exact pattern. It was just different flavors.
How does that happen? Is that a universe thing?
No, that happens. I mean, if you look at it from the neurobiological lens, it happens because there is something familiar about them that attracts us to them.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That makes
and
sense.
We don't even realize that that's what's attracting us to them. But, we talk about language earlier. If I'm around Spanish speakers, there's something that it does. That's my mother tongue, and I feel at ease with that language.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't mean every Spanish speaker is a good person. You know what I mean? There's bad and good people in every language. But I'm going to feel more comfortable and at ease, like a piece of home. It's the same thing with our adaptive responses. This smells like toxicity. That's my comfort food. We're not doing that logically. We're not doing that from a conscious perspective. It's our unconscious. It's the subconscious that's guiding those responses.
Next is allyship in the workplace, help for neurodivergent and other marginalized groups. In this clip we talk to Dr. Victoria Mattingly about allyship in the workplace, which is the active practice of using one's privilege and influence to support, advocate for, and create a more equitable and inclusive environment for colleagues from marginalized or underrepresented groups. An example in mental health would be a neurotypical assisting a neurodivergent. Dr. Victoria Mattingly is CEO and founder of the workplace inclusion consulting firm Mattingly Solutions. She is a keynote speaker, a published author, a mental health warrior, and passionate about improving human experience at work. She also speaks to organizations and professional associations about how to better support mental health in the workplace.
Yeah, so I have my PhD in organizational psychology. My brand is a lot of people call me Dr. V, and I really want to make the science of the workplace something that's translatable and actionable. You know, I'm in the business of improving the human experience at work, and working in service industry for over a decade really sparked my interest in organizational psychology and how can we give people the tools to manage stress, stressful environments and tough conversations and relationships. And then, from there, I've since worked with a wide variety of industries. I've run my own company for the last 6 years. I'm a published author and I'm a keynote speaker. And I got on the right concoction of medication. Like I need, certain medication, and that's just because my brain chemistry is different, and that's okay. Learning to accept it. I actually call them brain vitamins.
I do too. I have that. That's funny.
Yeah,
you said that.
I love that. It's a nice reframe.
Yeah.
And I remember growing up, my mom hid the meds or never talked about them or whatever, and for me, I don't want to be like that for my son. I don't want to have that stigma. And so I was call them my brain vitamins. And one day he was like, when I grow up, I'll have brain vitamins too. And I'm like, you might, but you might not. And that's okay too. Some people don't need them, and that's fine as well, but it's like we've reframed it to the point that he thinks he should have them too.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny you said that, because I always think of it that way. Because I'm on a cocktail of stuff. I had some really bad problems with just, you name it, anxiety, ADHD, dyslexia, OCD, all of that. People have heard that enough, I think. But it's the reason I started this show, to make people more aware that it's normal and there's nothing to be ashamed of, and that they should try to help themselves. Start off going to a counselor and work, do all the recovery things, maybe a group, and then consider medicine, especially if you never did before, because it's something that saved me, and I think a lot of people could say the same thing. So we got two people here that could say that. So, just don't automatically go onto the medication, but if things aren't working right with your other recovery methods, then definitely consider that if you can.
So specifically, an ally is someone that uses their power or status to support and advocate for someone different than them, right? So a male ally for women, straight ally for the LGBTQ population, neurotypical ally for neurodiverse, partners that they could work with. So that's an important distinction. So mentoring could absolutely be a part of that, but I think it's more of how can I leverage the power I have by being in the majority group to make this person who's not in this group make their life a little better,
That's terrific.
And what's really important to that is working with that person and understanding what they need. Because where allies get it wrong is they think, I'm going to come in and save the day and do X, Y, Z. But the people they're trying to help, they need something completely different, because they never stopped and had a conversation and been like, how can I best support you, So that's really a key premise I'm trying to bring home. Like it's a partnership that's so important to allyship.
Next in We're All Going Fkin Die, we revisit a raw and unfiltered conversation with Zulma Williams, host of Keeping It Real with Zulma the Swearing Therapist. This segment dives straight into the hard places, anxiety, grief, personal demons, and the weight of loss, alongside Zulma's own story of facing a breast cancer diagnosis at 46. Born and raised in Buenos Aires, Zulma survived abusive relationships, depression, and suicidal ideation before immigrating to the U.S. at 31. She rebuilt her life through education and purpose, earning her Bachelor of Social Work at 46, then returning years later to complete her master's and become a licensed social worker. Today she leads Dragonfly Therapy Services, specializing in trauma, anxiety, and depression, bringing a lifetime of grit and honesty to her work. This conversation is candid, emotional, and unmistakably real, and yes, Zulma's trademark colorful language is part of the package. Consider this your heads up as you decide how you want to take it in. Let's listen.
Okay, so this is an apple tree. It's giving you apples. Well, I want oranges. Well, I only have apples. So you can either take the apples and make an apple pie, or you go and find an orange tree. So you cannot make the apple tree give you oranges. You're gonna fucking die. So knowing that we are gonna die, hear me out. Knowing that we are gonna die, we can be depressed because life is gonna be over, or we can be living to the best of our ability because life is gonna be over. This love that you are grieving because your children are alive, but they don't want to receive your love. Grief is love that has nowhere to go. So I invite you to take that love and give it to Bob instead of your children and see what happens, because you are trying to control something that is not in your control. You are focusing only on what you are lacking, and that doesn't allow you to see your blessings. What we focus on grows. So if you're looking at the shit that you don't have, you're going to find more of that. Instead, if you start giving yourself that love that your children don't want to accept from you, you start giving it to Bob, and you start appreciating your blessings, then you're going to find more blessings to be grateful for.
We're achieving mental health. That's what we're doing, all of us, me included. I'm not going to tell you, oh, I'm happy, look at my Facebook, oh, I'm so happy. I'm happy, much more happy than I used to be, because I got on a good cocktail of medicine. So I can be happy. Before I wouldn't be able to be happy, ever. But now it's like a miracle. I wake up in the morning and I'm happy. That never happened. It was always wake up and I'm dragging around. Life is so hard. But I got on the good medicine and it changed like night and day.
So
and
hold on to that feeling of
Yeah.
happiness. Don't dance it because all my children don't like me.
I try to, and it's very difficult. Yeah, I mean,
embrace it. Yeah. It's like, oh, this flower is trying to blossom, and you're like, well, you're not blossomed yet. Fuck you. No, embrace it. Embrace
There's a good
it.
picture.
Like, get that happiness, and don't let it go. Don't let it slip away from you, and turn all that love and care that you have for your children toward yourself. You need it more than your children do.
There was too many years I was damaged. I got my depression in 1970. I was 12 years old, and my parents were clueless about any kind of they didn't even talk about nobody talked about mental health. I was on my own for years before my sister-in-law was kind enough to tell my parents he needs some counseling, he needs some help. But I was on my own, suffering as bad as anybody could suffer. I had rituals out the kazoo. I stayed in the shower for an hour because I had to get clean. I had to clean up all this pain. And then I get the floor wet. My father hit me in the face one time. He's a good person again. But he couldn't take it anymore. I was disobeying him, blatantly. So one day just hit me right in the face. But I would lay around for hours dreading, to go outside. Because if I go outside, I got to clean all the germs off me. So this is the kind of mental torture that I was in for years because of neglect. It's not their fault. It's the world's fault that, it didn't have any help. That's why I do this podcast. For those people that think they can't be helped, that think they can't get better. They can get better. Most people can get completely better.
Here is the thing.
And I'm determined to do that. I'm determined to straighten my life out.
And I'm so glad to hear that, because you have no control over the world and everything that happens, but you have 100% control over how you respond to what's happening.
Yes, so, I do, and I'm working on it.
You still have full control. So when you are feeling happy in the morning, grab onto that and don't fucking let go. Why would you allow anybody?
The demons come through. If I do something successfully, I'm like, oh, I can't do it successfully. The demons start talking and telling me, oh, you can't do it. You just can't do it. Forget about it. I'm going to give you this horrible anxiety pain if you try to do it.
But
I fight through it.
Like, you need to shut the fuck up. Sit there and be quiet. I'm going to fucking do it.
Yeah.
Independently of what the demon is saying. So you are in charge. You are the CEO of Bob's life.
And I'm not alone here. There's an entire world trying to get away from their demons.
I know.
Think on Earth.
And that's why I think that this is so awesome. But here's the thing. You are the CEO of Bob's life, right? The demons are your fucking employees. Why the fuck are you entertaining them and keep paying them money? Like,
but I have
around them.
Yeah. I have no self-esteem, I guess you could call it. I started agreeing with him. Well, yeah, you're right, because of this and that and the other. This guy doesn't like me. This guy makes fun of me. This guy calls me a clown. I got abused at work as well. Everywhere I went, I got abused. And I talked to another guy. He'd go to work for like 2 months. They'd figure out he's weird and let him go. The only reason he didn't let me go is because I did things that nobody else could do. I was smart enough to do it.
Exactly. So, so now, guess who is in charge of Bob's life? Bob, none of these motherfuckers. So you take your role as the CEO of Bob's life seriously, and you start reviewing all the fucking employees in your head. We're going to do performance reviews. You are not performing, you are out. You're not performing, you are out. You're not bringing me happiness, you are out. Why are you entertaining these demons in your head when they're not paying rent?
Because I believe them. Because I believe them.
I understand that. Time to fucking evict them. You have the difference your head. You have the power to keep them out.
I have 60 years, 55 years of the demons telling me I'm no good.
Okay.
And people mimicking that.
But you made it, despite what the demons told you. Or keep telling you. It's like, okay, just say, okay, and keep doing what you're doing. Like, You know what I mean? Like, again, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one and they stink.
Okay. I mean, you faced really horrible things. You got cancer at what, 40 something?
46. I got diagnosed at 46.
Yeah. I can't imagine how that would feel.
So
that's so bad.
When I first got diagnosed, I was asking, why me? And then I started thinking, like, okay, I don't have children, but I have my mom, and I had my sister, and I had nieces. And then I started thinking, if it was not me, would I have preferred that it was one of them? And the answer is no. So I changed the question from why me to why not me. And then I changed my mindset. And then I had a decision to make. I can sit in the corner and wait to die, or I can stand up and fight. Well, spoiler alert, so far I'm winning. 13 years I'm counting, right? So
you're in remission now?
Yes, I've been in remission for since basically for more than 10 years. So
maybe you're cured.
Is that we all have that capacity, right? It's like our mind is so powerful, and it's like, okay, so I'm gonna try to use it to my advantage, not against me. So changing from why me to why not me was huge, because I made that click in my head, and then everything changed. So I was like, okay. So I started my treatment, blah, blah, blah. And then I was approaching 50. I was in Argentina at that time. And I was like, oh, well, I want to celebrate my 50th birthday in America. So I came back, and then I started school. I started my master's at 50. Right? Like, so when people tell me, oh, I'm too old to go back to school, I'm like, motherfucker, I did my master's I started at 42, and then I started my master's at 50, and English is not my first language. What's your excuse?
You're ageless. That's the way I consider myself. I'm not an age. Don't put an age on. You know why? Because then I have to act that way. I have to get a garden or go on vacation somewhere. I hate those two things. But everybody goes, well, go. I want you to walk around and look at things. So what? They're just things. They're not important. People are important. Family's important. Doing technical things that I enjoy are important. And so when you tell me, oh, go on vacation or go get a garden, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to stop what I like to do because I'm old. I'm not going to fall for that. Old people should not fall for that kind of crap. But they do.
There is no such thing as old people. There are people who are 23 and they feel old. I'm 60 and I'm like, okay, what is the next adventure?
You're ready to go. Yeah. Right. Now you can live to 100, 120 maybe. Because, well, seriously, I mean, do they have techniques to... you're fighting cancer. You're going to beat cancer. So, fuck cancer.
Yeah, fuck cancer. I don't think I want to live until another 50 years. I think about another 20, I'll be good to go. But the thing is that we all have that capacity, and that's what I want the listeners to get out of this, our conversation. Is if you woke up today, that means that your mission in life is not complete. So just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you're going to come on the other side of this challenge.
Our next clip is from Transforming Anxiety, Stress, and Trauma Through Tapping Treatment for PTSD and Other Mental Issues. This is a grounded and heartfelt conversation with Amy Vince, who grew up carrying the impact of childhood trauma after her father left when she was 4. That early abandonment shaped years of PTSD, anxiety, and depression, and eventually pushed her to search for tools that could help her understand and calm what was happening inside her. Amy eventually discovered tapping, a structured technique that helped her manage symptoms and explore the patterns beneath them. In this episode, she walks us through the basics of the practice and how it can support people living with PTSD or other mental health challenges. And as always, exploring painful memories can be intense, so working with a trained counselor can offer safety and support along the way. Let's listen in.
And it was almost 25 years ago now that I was diagnosed with breast cancer at a very young age. I was only 31 at the time.
Oh my.
And with no history of breast cancer in my family, after I went through some surgeries and a hard emotional time for about a year, then I started getting really curious again and really asking myself, okay, what is it about me? What is it about me? Because I don't have that family history that made me get breast cancer at such a young age as opposed to somebody else.
Right.
And I just kind of intuitively looked at it from every different angle. To me, it wasn't just about what I eat or drink. It was about my spirituality and the thought processes that I go through, my limiting beliefs and my fears. It was all of those things combined. And so I really took a hard look at what my internal environment was like.
Right. So you had a lot of sorry, I might interrupt.
That's okay.
You had a lot of PTSD then, probably.
Yes, but I didn't recognize it as PTSD or any kind of trauma up until many years later. I always assumed that trauma or PTSD was from only big events. Like I assumed that because I wasn't physically abused that I didn't have trauma. And because I wasn't, in a wartime event that I didn't have trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So I really had such a narrow understanding of what trauma was. So I didn't know the cause of these things, not until many years later. But I started searching. That was really what started my search to find those answers.
Right.
And, I was introduced to tapping and I immediately recognized it as a really powerful tool. So I started tapping on the root cause of the problem as opposed to the symptoms. And in a very short period of time, we're talking about 2 weeks, maybe a half an hour a day, everything changed for me. I realized that I had been looking through the world with this lens of something's wrong with me, and doing that tapping removed it. And I was able to finally see the truth of who I am and what my childhood situation really was, as opposed to blaming myself. I now was able to focus on healing myself from that belief. It was a total change of perspective. And that was the moment when I decided, like, I can't keep this to myself, right? Like, everybody needs to know this. I can't be the only one that has been struggling with not only just not recognizing their own trauma, but using tools in the wrong way, maybe, and not harnessing their full potential. And, just making it available to people became my passion. Just under the surface.
And I believe it works for most people.
Yeah.
But I have this little caveat. And so you're saying don't go too far, but keep doing it on a daily basis. Would that be a way to go?
Absolutely. I think that it would all help. And I think going way, way slower, just picking one tiny little thing to work on, not like a whole big picture of a really traumatizing event or a whole massive fear
I let it
about.
all go. I mean,
Yeah.
I get down to the nitty gritty, and it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so,
I can imagine.
Yeah. So I had to stop, but I really believe it works. I really believe that you can do it, and that our listeners can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Could you go over a little bit more exactly how to do it? Because I know your technique has to be perfect, right? Or pretty close.
Where you tap is really, really important. You can't really be very sloppy or not mindful about where you're tapping, because it won't be nearly as effective or efficient. So I'll just explain kind of the whole process where you start with something. So the first thing you're gonna do is identify a topic that you want to focus on. And we'll just call it general anxiety for the moment, because that's what a lot of people struggle with. Right. So if you say, I'm feeling really anxious in this moment, and that's what I want to work on. So the first thing you want to do is take a rating 0 to 10 and see where you are on that scale. 0 is absolutely nothing. You're totally fine. And 10 is extreme. So find out where you are on that scale. Say you may be an 8. And I would always kind of instruct my clients to go within and try and feel if they feel somewhere in their body that anxiety is manifesting. It could be like a tightness in their chest, or maybe their tummy feels tense and uncomfortable, or, something along those lines. But just try to identify a spot where they tend to hold their stress.
Next is troubled teen programs. For real, do they help or harm? A revealing and deeply informed conversation with Dr. Corey Gentry, author of Selling Sanity, The Troubled Teen Industry, The Insane Profits, and the Kids Who Pay the Price. A survivor of a troubled teen program himself, Corey brings both lived experience and academic rigor, holding a Ph.D. in political science from the London School of Economics. He walks us through his own rough upbringing, the program he endured, and the larger system that markets itself as help while too often causing lasting harm. Corey makes it clear that not every program is dangerous, but the exceptions are rare, and families deserve to approach these decisions with the same scrutiny they'd use when choosing a college. Today, he works with families, educators, and advocates to identify red flags, protect vulnerable kids, and push for meaningful reform. Beyond his advocacy, Corey is also a strategic leader in healthcare innovation and organizational growth, bringing a wide-angle view of how systems operate and how they can change. It's an essential conversation for anyone trying to understand the troubled teen industry and the tools we need to keep young people safe. Let's listen in.
Yeah, so about the time I was, growing up in the Southeast and kind of like the rural areas that I was in, particularly if you don't have any money, there's not really a whole hell of a lot to do out. And I mean, I know now you spent time in the Greenville area, so you know that kind of area. I mean, outside of the sort of small urban areas, if you can even call them that, in the Southeast, there's not a whole hell of a lot to do in those places. So we, did what all kids did, and I thrived in school and all of that stuff. But then when I was 12, 13, puberty kicked in, and all your whole world, just as a young man anyway, your whole world just starts changing. I started noticing women for the first time, and you want to fit in socially, and I started becoming painfully aware of our socioeconomic situation, and a lot of things that are just really damaging for young kids growing up, particularly when you're poor, is one, it's as a white person in the Southeast, growing up, when I did in the kind of racial environments that I was in, there was this kind of feeling of, well, this shouldn't be us, so there was this kind of moral conundrum of like, oh, well, what's wrong with your family that you all are poor and kind of living amongst all these other poor people. And then there was a major religious component to it. My family had kind of converted to Protestantism and more fundamentalist forms of Christianity. So, between the abuse and stuff that I was getting at home and then going to, these kind of hellfire and brimstone churches, it was just utterly terrifying. And when I was, 12 or 13 years old, I started doing what all the kids in my neighborhood were doing. We started, stealing beers and stuff here and there, drinking, going out and flirting with girls, started smoking cannabis and stuff like that. And it was, just kind of what every kid that I knew was doing at that time, whether they were, the valedictorian or, just kind of some bum floating through. We all kind of did the same things and went to the same little parties out in the woods and, did all of that stuff. And around that time, I started feeling a fair bit of camaraderie with individuals for the first time in my life around using substances and stuff. It was just something that like you could all kind of relate on, it was like having a beer or doing this or doing that. Looking back on it, it was just a social lubricant for teenage angst. But I think it was the combination of the, culture and the religious fundamentalism, because within the Pentecostal church, there was like no drinking, no anything. So, and my parents really kind of adopted that fundamentalist ideology. And so when I found alcohol and drugs, it was just something that kind of took a little bit of the edge off, and again was like a social lubricant for me to talk to women or, have friends and have something to just kind of relate and talk to about. And when I was 15, a friend of mine who we would do these things with, and at that time it was, on weekends, mostly after school and stuff. And it was very benign behavior looking back on it. It was what all teenagers do. We all, you drink or you experiment with stuff, you get in trouble, you do stupid things and get caught doing stupid things. So it was all pretty par for the course. And he got caught sneaking in or out of his house. I can't remember which one it was, but he got caught for the God knows how many times sneaking out. And his parents sent him away to this treatment program called Insight. And he was gone for a few days, and then he sort of showed up back at school one day, and he was skipping around and, seemed very happy. And we were all like, oh my God, what happened? We wanted to get the dirt on, what happened. His parents caught him. We were like, oh, Kenneth, you're such a fuck up. Like, you got in trouble again. Where did they send you to this time? And he was very happy and enthusiastic, like very enthusiastic about this treatment program that he went to. And he was telling me all about it and some of our friends one morning before homeroom, when everyone's just hanging out before the bell rings. And he kept talking about how beautiful the women were, and there were all these, rich kids, and it was over in the like very swanky part of town. So we lived in a little suburb called Grovetown, Georgia, which is where all the trailer parks and all of that stuff was. It was the closest little village to the military base. And then Augusta was, this really kind of bougie, the Masters golf tournament was there. It was where all the like rich people lived and stuff. So he was going to these support meetings with this treatment program in like the ritzy side of town. And he just kept talking about how attractive the women were. He was like, man, we went to this house last night. It was like bigger than my yard. And we were all like, oh man, let's, and he had me with the girls. He was like, oh my God, there's like 15 or 20 just beautiful, women there, and they all want you to ride with them and hang out, and they tell you they love you. And I was like, I am going to this meeting. I kind of unpacked some of my childhood and what that was like and all of that. And they didn't ask me any questions about my childhood. They didn't ask me any questions about my history. They didn't do any kind of like in-depth psychiatric evaluation on me. They didn't, test to see if I was depressed or if I had anxiety or ADHD, anything. In fact, they were very acrimonious towards any kind of traditional psychiatry therapy or medicine. So any kind of psychiatric medication was completely forbidden. They didn't let you talk to or see anyone outside of the group that wasn't a group counselor. So any kind of psychiatry or therapist that was not in their cohort, it was completely forbidden. And then they had all these other roles, like with relapse, which, anytime you're working with broody teenagers in any kind of behavioral health or addiction capacity, there are going to be relapses. I mean, it's just a part of the landscape.
Relapses, they catch them taking drugs again.
Relapse is like they'll go and take drugs, or, they'll drink, or they'll, for some behavioral health episodes, it could mean like engaging in certain kind of destructive behaviors or thought patterns. Sometimes with like schizophrenics, for instance, they'll have like you could consider it like a psychotic relapse, but it's like a flare up of psychotic episodes. So like delusions or hallucinations, auditory sounds, things like that. It's all very common, particularly with teenagers nowadays, and not nowadays, but anytime, because they're very much developing at that point. So your brain chemistry is not stable. Your physiology isn't stable. Everything's kind of just in developmental mode. Your brain is like functioning at peak capacity, and your body and neurochemical systems are constantly like changing and altering. So it's and you have hormones just pulsing through your entire body. So it's in general, it's a trying time for any young human that's going through that period. But you factor in some substance abuse and behavioral health disorders, and it's just par for the course. So I did have a few relapses, and I got caught smoking weed a few times, and a lot of it again was just it was peer pressure. It was the normal kind of teenage things of, I want to fit in. I want these people to like me. There was almost always a girl involved where she was like, oh, I'm going to this party and there's going to be booze. And, as a 16-year-old, you're not going to try and go to this party. So, those things, but in the group, it was very punitive. So they didn't talk about it in most substance use programs. Today, at least the halfway decent ones, they do view relapses. It's not something that everybody celebrates, but it's like, okay, this happened. What can we learn from it, and how can we kind of move on? But there it was very shame-based. So every time there was a slip, they wouldn't call it a relapse. They would say, you bailed on us. So it was really like, you let the group down, you let us down. They would use a lot of things like, we're very disappointed in you. And then for the monetary side of it, they used it as a big, oh, well, you need to send your son to this rehab again, or you need to send us here again. So it was very much a like, oh, this is a kind of an upsell opportunity. Although at the time I didn't see it that way. They're called behavior modification programs now, looking back on it. And the troubled teen industry is a big and diverse industry, and there are some very good evidence-based, like healthy programs out there that deal with troubled teens and are very effective at doing so. And then there are some other programs that tend to fall into the more punitive, like what we call behavior modification. So they tend to take on like therapeutic boarding schools. Wilderness programs are another one that people hear a lot about, and they use a lot of flowery language and stuff to kind of doll it up. But the real basis of those kind of behavior mod programs is they want to break you down psychologically enough to where you kind of become compliant, is really the, I liken it to, they get someone to shut up by duct taping their mouth closed, and eventually you're going to stop trying to scream. But it's effective for what it is, but eventually when you take the tape off, they're going to have something to say.
What were some of the dark things that they did? Did they do any of those really immoral things?
Oh, well, I can give you so many examples. There were a lot of, they really like to pull information out of you, and that was kind of the break you down part of it. And, so we would have these like group therapy sessions, and they weren't conducted by a licensed therapist or a licensed anybody. They had these kind of counselors with these certifications that, any moron, frankly, could go online and get within a matter of a few hours. And they were leading these groups. And, it was like a group of my outpatient. I think there were like 6 or 7 people in the outpatient, and it was young men, young women between, I think the youngest was like 12 or 13. and the oldest was, 17, maybe close to 18. And, they would have these young women in public groups, like just talk and pull information out of them about being sexually abused, about being harassed. I mean, things you should not be sharing in a group setting, particularly with like other young men.
And did you think they got off on that? Is that why they were doing that?
It was a way for them to just exert control over you. And as soon as they broke you down and you started crying, it was almost like they got you. And as soon as you hit that point, that was when they'd really come in and start being like, oh my God, we love you so much. And like, you're so brave for doing this. And there was a part of you that was like, hey, F off. I didn't want or need to say this. But then it was really strange because I remember talking about some things that happened to me when I was, a very young child. And, stuff with my mother, and there was some cousins and relatives that, really did physical harm to me when I was a kid. And I was talking about my mother and how, some of the horrible things that she would say, because it was regularly like, we're going to send you away to adoption, or, you were a mistake, and, we don't love you, all of this stuff. And I remember these counselors trying to just pull all of this stuff out of me in a public setting, which I was very uncomfortable with doing. And finally, I just started like breaking down and crying, and really had a bit of a psychotic break looking back on it. But I just really kind of fell apart in the office, and they looked at me after, and they were like, you chose all of this. So it was essentially like after they got me to say all of the information, then everything was like, this is your choice. So it was all about personal empowerment.
Our final clip is from Overcoming Binge Eating, Rewiring the Brain. This is a thoughtful and empowering conversation with Amber Abela, who helps women break free from binge eating and overeating by understanding how the brain forms habits around food. After years of struggling with her own relationship with eating, trying therapy, calorie counting, and weight loss programs that never addressed the root patterns, Amber discovered practical, psychology-based tools that helped her shift the unconscious loops driving her behavior. In this episode, she shares what she learned on that journey, the science behind binge eating patterns, and the strategies that helped her move from shame and frustration to a sense of calm and control around food. Amber's mission is simple and powerful: to make sure no one feels alone or broken in their struggle, and to show that real change comes from understanding the brain, not from more restriction or willpower. It's an honest, hopeful look at how people can rebuild their relationship with food and reconnect with confidence and joy in everyday life. Let's listen in.
And I remember my first binge so clearly. It was on 7 cookies around Christmas time. I had promised myself that I was just going to have one, but then I had another and another and another until I had eaten all 7. So I was eating more cookies. I was having these binges, and they started happening every day. And I thought I could just try harder, just use more willpower, just learn more about nutrition in order to get out of it. But it was almost like the more I learned about food and nutrition, the worse that it got. So I decided to go to therapy, and therapy is the approach that a lot of people will take if they're looking for this approach of mental health and psychology. But the problem that I had with therapy is I felt like we kept going to my past, and I couldn't really find this big trauma or anything huge that my eating issues stemmed from. And I felt like I had to just get all my ducks in a row and solve my entire life in order to get my eating issues solved. And so, I got a lot of awareness through therapy, but it never actually solved my binge eating. Yeah, so 2 things. First thing that I learned after therapy is truly the role of our biology and how we eat. So if you think about, if you were to be in a desert and someone were to only spoon feed you little tablespoons of water all day, you would probably feel really obsessed around the water. You would sit by the water bowl all day. You would wait for your next feeding of water because it would be a scarce resource. And this is sometimes what happens when we are dieting is our brain is seeing that it's either perceived scarcity or food is actually scarce where we're not getting enough and we're not fueling our body properly. And when that happens, our brain will send out what I call biological urges in order to eat. Now, these biological urges are almost impossible to fight. And I'll talk about habitual urges in a second too, because there's the other aspect here of habit. But basically, if we are not getting in enough calories or enough food, it is really hard to fight any of those cravings because, again, it's your biology coming up, letting you know that it needs more food, that it's trying to help you so you don't die. And so I always recommend that, if it's this true hunger, that we want to honor it. And that might mean we need to have a snack then. That could mean we need to beef up our meals a bit more, where we have either larger meals, like more quantity, or we have a higher quality. So we have more protein, we have more carbs, we have more fat. We have a certain thing that might be missing in there to really help us feel satisfied. And when we do that, what's so interesting is people always think that's such a small thing, but it often makes such a huge difference for someone. I've had someone who's been working with me for quite a while now, and she was really resistant to the idea of eating breakfast because she's heard about intermittent fasting, and she was really just stuck on this idea that she didn't need breakfast because she wasn't super starving in the morning and she could just push through. But what's interesting is when she started eating a breakfast, it drastically reduced her cravings for chocolate in the afternoon and evening. And that's because her body finally felt safe, that it had enough food previously in the day, that it didn't feel like it needed to send out these strong cravings for these hyper palatable foods of carbs and of sugar to make sure we're getting in enough. So we don't just bring in every single food imaginable and make our cabinets into Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, but we can learn how to have these foods in amounts that feel good to us. And we know that it's possible because there are still natural eaters around the world who will do something like have a couple of chips and put the bag away or leave chips behind. And I know when you're in it, it can feel like, oh my gosh, that's impossible. I can never do that. And I was there too. But I've now become one of these natural eaters. And so that's what I teach people is how do we change our mindset around these foods and get into abundance mindset? Because a lot of times we're overeating around them too because we're scared of them going away. We're scared that the diet's going to start tomorrow, that someone's going to tell us these are off limits. So we want to just get it in all right now and say, screw it, I'm just going to eat them because, I'm going to be good tomorrow. I'll get back on track tomorrow. But if there is no track or no strict rules around it, then it makes it so we don't feel that pressure to get it in all right now because we know we could have it again later. Yeah, so the last thing that I want to share with people is just really a reminder that you're not broken here, that binge eating is actually a very normal thing that's supposed to be happening when we are dieting, when our brain is getting in a strong habit. It is more of a sign that you have a very strong habit forming brain, which in the past would be very good for survival. Not so good for survival in our modern day where food is so easily accessible and we have all this. But just remembering that you're not broken and you're not alone in this. I know for me, for so many years, I felt so ashamed of it. But really, at the end of the day, all you're doing is eating food. There's nothing wrong with eating food. Yes, it might be more than your body needs, but when we take that shame bubble away from it, it makes it so much easier to get out.
That wraps up our Best of 2025 recap. Don't miss next week's Season 10 finale with Carrie Blaser, the final episode of the original OTR. Next season launches the full Real Plus rebrand, a new logo, a new website, improved sound, and a renewed mission to bring truth, clarity, and real mental health conversations back to the center. The first 2 episodes of 2026 were recorded before the software upgrade, but after that, my voice should sound a lot less scratchy. We're kicking off with Hollywood icon Chris Boardman, 8-time Academy Award nominee and composer for films like The Color Purple. Real Plus members will get early access to the Chris Boardman premiere on January 20th. To receive this and all upcoming benefits free for at least a year, go to the home website and use the fully anonymous Anon post menu item at https://bobadelman.wixsite.com/OTR mental health one word to request the Real Plus 2026 benefits password. You can also create a standard login through the main Real Plus site at ko-fi.com. I'm excited for everything coming to Real Plus. Happy New Year. See you inside Real Plus.